Hey there friends, I'm Leo, Logically, and today we're going to be making a game for the Unreal Spring Jam of 2020, which is a game jam hosted by my beloved Unreal Engine, and something that I really could not miss out. This time they gave us around 5 days to make a game about what is hidden in snow comes forth in the thaw. Thaw? Thaw. That's kind of a weird word. I think that's just because I'm not a native English speaker. So after a quick Google search, I found out that thaw means to melt, something to melt. And then in context, basically means that something will be revealed in the snow. And I ended up making a game with, you guessed it, in the snow. Yeah. How creative, right? My idea was to make a very simple platformer that tries to tell a story about this little guy that is trying to recover the heat from his lost world by activating some altars and trying to gain more power in order to reclaim what was his or his people's. And at the end, a choice would be presented after you discover a truth that would be buried within the snow. So after I was done with the planning, it was time to go to Blender to do some trees. So there I was, trying to make some trees using the skin modifier and failing miserably. Until I found out about this plugin called Modular Trees that you can use to create trees from nodes while you change their parameters as you see fit. It basically works like this. You just open up a new window, click on the little tab here, then you can create a new tree using the nodes they provide. It's all very simple and very intuitive to do. After I finished doing some variations of trees, I imported them over to Unreal and I started working with volumetric fog, and I was already starting to see, because of the dynamic lighting, I was already seeing some light shining through the leaves and it was starting to look very cool. Now that I have the basic scene ready, it was time for me to make a movable character to walk around and do his thing. So I opened my good old ZBrush and started doing some sculpting. My general idea here was to have a very simple character that does not have a lot of animations. So I thought, well, why not have a hovering cloth type of character? Because then I really wouldn't need to worry a lot about animation and animation blending, and I could use the cloth system from Unreal to have some smooth kind of animations that would look pretty without me having that much trouble in the animation department. This time, instead of doing the retopology in Blender, I used a different workflow where I reduce the poly count on ZBrush and then I bake all of my materials there and then I import everything done to Blender. I just think it's a lot faster to do it like that, but if you're going to do some crazy animations, then I recommend that you do good old manual retopology. So there it is, the character is done. But wait a minute, why is his cloth not flapping around? Is it glitched or something? Yeah, unfortunately it is a little bit glitched at the moment, but I found out this workaround solution that works with the newest versions of Unreal. Normally you just need to create a new cloth data from selection, right? Then you apply the clothing data, paint the area that you want the cloth to be active on, and as soon as you turn off the painting, it should already be working, right? What you need to do as a workaround is to actually paint the value before you apply the cloth. You also can't change the values after you apply them. So if you need to change anything, you need to delete the clothing data and create another one. So create the clothing data, paint the clothing data, and then you apply it. If it still doesn't work out, check out your physics asset and see if you don't have any big collisions on your character's bones that may be interrupting with your cloth. After that, I had some animation set up and made the animation blending where the character just leans forward where he wants to move and does some crazy acrobatics when firing off his abilities. To make the character movement, I really did nothing special. I just used the normal Unreal third-person character template. But what I'm going to go over is stuff that you can use to traverse the map, such as dashing, double jumping, gliding, attacking, stuff like that. So let's start off with the double jumping. First, I created a variable called canDoubleJump, which would always be set to true. This variable is checked when the player presses space and is not touching the ground. Then it is going to turn can double jump off and apply a force to the player, as well as play the particle effects and sounds that I need. The can double jump variable is always reset when the player touches the ground. You can also make this mechanic a lot better by checking if the player is ascending or descending. Maybe you can have on the tick function something that will verify the player's Z position on the map every frame or every 0.1 seconds to see if he is actually going up or going down. Now for the dashing, something that really took me a long time to make, and it was all just a matter of checking a box on the player movement and I would be good to go. The way that I do the dashing is basically the same way that I do the double jump, applying a force on the direction that you are pressing on the keyboard. But my main issue was that the speed at which you are dashing is different when you are on the air or when you are on the ground because of the friction that the ground makes with the character. I was thinking on multiple ways to checking if the player is on the floor or if the player is flying or something like that, and then applying different forces based on where the player is. But that system was just too unreliable and it was giving me too many headaches. So then I found this magical checkbox. You just gotta click on your character's movement component and then check the used separate braking friction. And dashing in the air or on the floor will work the same way. I also changed the player's rotation immediately when he dashes, so it's a little bit more snappy. Now for the actual dashing, I just verify if the player is available to dash, then I lock his movement, apply the force and play the animation. Just ignore this ending. The gliding is a little bit more complicated because it involves a few other things that I did for the player's management in general. The player has an energy meter, which will always limit his usage for powers. This energy meter updates after a set amount of time and then changes the variable of the energy based on another variable that I made. Using the tick function, I check if the player is currently hovering or using his Witcher sense. I'll explain that later. If he is, then I will drain his energy, but if he's not, it will recharge. But you might be wondering, how do I know if the player wants to glide? After the player presses space, I fire off an event that will check back again after 1 second if the player is still holding out space. Then if he is, I'll start an event to hover. But if the player lets go of space, the character will also stop hovering because of this loop that I have set up on an event. Now for our character setup to be completed, the character will also need to attack, right? So I use this incredible particle emitter asset called Advanced Magic Effects, made by Keki. And then with that, I set up this actor that contains the particle emitter with a projectile movement that will make it always move forward. And then I have some raycast events that will always make sure that the fire is touching the floor. And then some that is always going to be scaling down the fires. Once the fires get small enough, they're gonna just self-destruct. Oh, and also on the collision hit event, I cast to the enemy class. If it hits an enemy, it will destroy the enemy actor and make a noise. And that's it. Now from the player side, every time he attacks, I will execute a function on the animation blueprint to spawn the tornado using an anim notify. So that is almost all of the player's interactions. But what about the world? How are we going to make this snowy forest and make everything look pretty? Well, the first thing that I went around to do was the snow particle effect in Niagara. I had this very simple setup with the main part of it basically being this collision that stops the particle on the floor. And then on the player, I update the location of the snow particle in the tick function so it will always spawn particles near the player. Now, one thing that I really wanted to do was snow deformation using a tessellation texture. And what's really funny is that I found some tutorials on YouTube and I thought to myself, well, this might be surprisingly easy. And I even wrote that on the script for this video. But I was so wrong, you have no idea. I followed up those 2 videos that I found and I kind of got an understanding of what they do, but it just doesn't work on the current Unreal version that I'm on. So basically what you need is a camera with a render texture on it, and then the camera will scan for the player's footsteps or something like that, and then it's going to draw an alpha texture. This alpha texture you can use a lerp for a tessellation texture to work with that, basically. So then I was already going crazy trying to do this and it was just not working. So I found out this amazing Unreal asset on the marketplace. It's called Surface Trails and it basically does exactly what I needed. And the best part is that it is very easy and straightforward to set up. And then you can use it not only for snow but for stuff like mud or anything that would need tessellation really. So now that the base mechanics are set up, I went to do the actual environment. So I went back to Blender and I did some rocks and some bushes using the Modular Trees plugin. I also made the asset for a really big rock with some runes on ZBrush. Using the color material from the stone, I made this alpha texture on Photoshop for emissive material values, so I could change not only the color of the energy stone but also the amount of emissiveness, all using this alpha texture. But now I have a feeling that my meshes are looking a little bit too simple, close to all of these tessellation materials and the snow falling. It just doesn't feel like there's any snow on the actual meshes, right? That's when I found out this really awesome tutorial on how you can use alpha textures to make snow grunge on objects based on their texture maps. This tutorial is really old but still works like a charm and really gave my meshes a much better look with this snowy environment. I also used these material parameters on my checkpoint stones for the cinematics, for the snow melting away from the stone when the stone gets activated. Since I still have a lot of stuff to be showing on this game, I will be splitting this video in 2 parts with the next one coming next week. So if you want to see me recording my dogs to use as enemy noises or how I made this scenario, subscribe for more stuff like this. If you want to check out the game, the link for the itch.io page will be down in the description. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I'm Leo, signing off.